So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Frankel. I'll be emceeing tonight. I'm at Yonsei University's Underwood International College. I actually specialize in Korean and comparative literature, so I'm not an art history specialist, and as such, I'm very much looking forward to today's lecture. It sounds extremely interesting. We were supposed to have some welcoming remarks from Dr. Lee Dae-yong, the president of the Academy of Korean Studies. With the weather, she's been a bit delayed, and she'll be welcoming you all soon, but as she's not here and we're already a few minutes late, we're just going to get started, and we'll hear from the president soon. Now I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Lee Sung-mi, who is Professor Emerita, also from the Academy of Korean Studies, specializes, of course, in art history. And I'm going to very briefly, introduce her, because to fully introduce her would probably take too long. So, Dr. Lee Sung-mi, Professor Emerita of Art History at the Academy of Korean Studies, previously served as Dean of the Graduate School at the Academy, Professor and Director of the University Museum at Deokseong Women's University in Seoul. She has been a member of the National History Council of Korea and has served as the President of the Korean Art History Association. In April of 2014, she served as the Special Lecturer at the Tang Center for East Asian Art History at Princeton University. Since the early 1990s, she has been conducting in-depth research into the court documents of the Joseon dynasty, collectively known as Uige, or Books of State Rights. In September of 2011, she was awarded the Medal of the Order of Civil Merit from the government for her advisory work for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade in the negotiation for the return of the Uige documents from France, as well as her own research and publications on such documents. Professor Lee was educated at Seoul National University, followed by a master's degree at UC Berkeley and a PhD at Princeton University. Her recent publications on Korean painting include Searching for Modernity, Western Influence and True View Landscape in Korean Painting of the Late Joseon Period, and that's from 2014, and the award-winning Joseon Dynasty Books of Royal Wedding in Art Historical Perspective from 2008, and Korean Landscape Painting, Continuity and Innovation Through the Ages. So, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Professor Lee Sung-mi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frankel. I am indeed happy and honored to be here this evening in front of such distinguished guests. Actually, my lecture today is based on my research for the book, which is over here, so I put it here. Later you can have a look. Mr. Frankel mentioned the title. It's called Searching for Modernity, Western Influence and True View Landscape in Painting of the Late Joseon Period. And so I thought that this Western influence in Korean painting and the True View landscape paintings were based on the same intellectual background of the Late Joseon period, and they were intrinsically interwoven together to represent Korea's desire for modernity. So that's why I gave this title. So you will hear only one part of my book today, but I included some landscapes. So I would like to give you some chronology of the Late Joseon period. When we say Late Joseon, it means around 1700 to 1910. There were two major invasions. Well, actually, there are four, because two from Japan and two from the Manchus. And then So from the end of the 16th century to the mid-17th century, Korea suffered a great deal from these 4 invasions. And of course, Korean land was really devastated by these invasions. And it was starting from King Sukjong that the Korea began to recover the nightmares and destructions of the invasions. And King Sukjong is followed by Gyeongjong, short-lived, but then the 2 other kings, King Yeongjo and Jeongjo, were the great kings of the late Joseon period. King Yeongjo, having been on the throne for 51 years, he achieved a number of cultural as well as political affairs. And King Jeongjo, who is not the son of King Yeongjo but grandson, at this point our history is a bit complicated, so I will not go into it. And then he died, King Jeongjo died in 1800, and I would say that culturally speaking, the death of King Jeongjo marked the end of the cultural efflorescence of the late Joseon period. And then the other 3 kings were not that prominent, and King Gojong of the 1864 to 1897 was the one who established the Daehan Empire. So Korea was a kingdom before, but at this point, some intellectuals decided that we declare ourselves an empire. So the name Daehan Jaeguk became our country's name right now, Daehan Mingu. The Westerners just call us Korea, but Korea comes from the name of the dynasty way earlier, Goryeo dynasty. So Daehan Jaeguk is the period that gave us our country name, Daehan Mingu. And then unfortunately, Korea around the late 19th century once again was in turmoil because there were so many superpowers from the West as well as Japan who eyed on Korea to put their traces on us. So it is also historically very difficult for us, for Korea. So with that much introduction, historical background, I will go into the art history part. First of all, when we say Western painting techniques, how it would be different from paintings of Korean painting techniques. So I will go into somewhat the Western as well as Eastern painting techniques, comparison of both. And Western civilization began to come to Korea since the 17th century. And so we will go through comparative analysis and introduction of Western painting in China, because Korea received Western painting techniques by way of China. And Korean intellectuals' response to Western painting is very interesting and revealing. So I will read some quotations from their writings. And then finally, we will look at the paintings which began to show Western influence around, beginning from the early 18th century. Books on Western learning made their way to Korea through Joseon emissaries who traveled to Yenjing. Yenjing is the capital of the Qing dynasty. And these emissaries were called collectively 부연사, which means emissary to Yenjing. And their diaries were really interesting observation of Western as well as new Qing culture. So the route to Yenjing during the late Ming and Qing period served as a conveyor belt from China to Korea of advanced learning and Western culture. Travel diaries of Korean emissaries to Yenjing reveal the shocks and amazement of those who, for the first time, saw Western-style paintings on the walls and ceilings of Yenjing's Catholic Church. Right now, these Catholic churches were rebuilt, but they are devoid of these wonderful paintings that the Korean emissaries wrote about. And so I will read some of the quotations. These travel diaries are called 연행록, or travelogue to Yenjing. We have some 150 such diaries starting from the late 17th to early 19th century. And they are really great documentary evidence studying the exchange or the traffic of Korean and Chinese and Western cultures at that time. Johann Adam Charles von Bell, his Chinese name, Tang Ro Wang, sorry. He's a German Jesuit missionary and astronomer at the service of Qing court. Crown Prince Sohyun, before returning to Korea in 1644 from his 9 years of captivity in Shenyang, had contact with him in Yenjing. This Crown Prince was one of the high-ranking persons who became captives of the Manchus after the invasion of 1636, and this was really the most humiliating surrender in our history. So he had to stay there for 9 years, but then he met with intellectuals and foreigners in China and did receive a great deal of influence in the knowledge of Western civilization and Christianity. And so because of this kind of influence from China of Western art, we have this painting of a dog by an unidentified artist. I'm sure many of you know already what the difference between Western art and East Asian art is, but I will simply go through very quickly the use of perspective system to depict spatial depth. This was developed during the Renaissance period by Brunelleschi and Alberti. And we call it geometric or linear perspective, or sometimes it's called one-point perspective. And I will show this frame when we go into atmospheric perspective again. So the highlighted in yellow is the part that we are dealing with. So I'm sure many of you who took Introduction to Western Art have seen this diagram already. Geometric perspective system developed by Alberti. So these lines are called orthogonals, and they're supposed to converge into one point here. That's the eye level of the viewer. So it's called one-point perspective. And this one is a drawing made according to Brunelleschi's theory. This, I'm sure many of you know how the baptistry of Santa Maria del Fiore in Florence looks like this. And from the top, it looks like this, but this is very high, so the people standing far away, the eye level is over here, and then it comes to this kind of smaller, precise drawing. The best example of a painting reflecting the Renaissance perspective is no doubt this one. If I have time, I can talk about this painting for 1 hour. This is my favorite painting indeed. If I just limit my discussion on one-point perspective system, these are the so-called orthogonals, the lines coming to the center, and these tapestries all converge somewhere, and that somewhere is the head of Christ. So that's the center of attraction in this painting. And then, this one-point perspective functions not only as a space-creating device, but also as attention-bringing device. So one of the most important person here. This is the moment when Christ announces that before dawn, one of you will betray me. So there are 12 disciples seated along the table, and 3. So I'm an art historian, so I have to tell more about this. So another aspect is to capture the dramatic moment. That's one of the classical art characteristics of classical art. So here, Christ is very calm, like this in the center, but look at the commotion of all his disciples with hand gestures and whatnot. 3. But then the person who will betray Christ has his face in dark, and that is over here. So he's the only one whose face is has no light. So anyway, it goes on and on, and so this is the best example of the Renaissance one-point perspective. Now, East Asian painting also has some semblance of space-creating devices. This is the 8th century wall painting in China, Dunhuang. And if you look at this is Amitabha's Paradise of Amitabha. And all these wonderful buildings with a big palace behind. If you try to make out some kind of perspective, you still can see a great deal of space here. But this is different from the Western one-point perspective system we've seen. So the buildings, if you extend the lines, instead of meeting at one point, it will meet at this central axis. So that's the difference. And then this is a page showing parallel perspective drawing for depicting buildings. And actually the term parallel perspective is a creation by Western scholars. We didn't have any such term. And so the roof lines and floor tiles all go parallel to each other. And yet we can see certain amount of space created. So this is the kind of painting created in accordance with the parallel perspective system of East Asian tradition. Now we go to the atmospheric perspective. This is a Roman painting. Atmospheric perspective is exactly the way it means. Objects closer to the viewer is clearer than objects farther to the viewer. So by doing this, one can create certain sense of distance and space. In East Asian art, we do have certain amount of atmospheric perspective. Dongyan is the 10th century artist, and in this painting we see the foreground and the background in the distance with mist. Shen Gua is a very famous Chinese scholar and scientist. He commented, when seen from a distance, this painting looks like an immortal's abode with mist in the distance. It does really. So in East Asian art, there are ways of expressing distances. High distance, looking up to the mountain's peak from its foot. Deep distance, from in front of the mountain, looking past it to beyond. Level distance, looking from a nearby mountain at more distant one. And this is a very famous painting of 11th century Northern Song by Guo Shi. And here, let's say if you're standing right over here, then you will feel a great deal of distance up to here. It's called the high distance. And then here, between the two mountain peaks, you see some depth and distance. It's called deep distance. And in this corner, from here over there, there's some level part, but you still feel the distance. It's called level distance. So there are three distances. Additionally, toward the end of the Northern Song and beginning of the Southern Song period, people began to think of more ways of expressing distance. wide stretch of water. This is called broad distance. And hidden distance, or it's called, it can also be called mysterious or deep distance. Obscure distance, miwon is the word. Scenery becomes obliterated in vagueness and mistiness. And so I brought one painting showing this new sense of distance. Really very wide sense of broad distance here, and then mysterious, we don't know what's in there, and all ambiguous and lost. This is one example of Southern Song painting. And then objects are given light and shade. It's easy, so I'll go very fast. This, of course, is famous Michelangelo's painting. And look, the way the light and shade is given, the volume of the figures are so clearly depicted. So I should mention my own experience. I went to Rome for the first time in 1971, and at that time, we took our 5-year-old son with us, and he has been going through so many churches and museums. And when we went to the Vatican, and he looked at the ceiling and stared it for a while, and he asked me, "Mom, are they real?" So the figures really looked real, not only because of the application of light and shade, but it's because of Michelangelo. In East Asian painting, also we have a system of representing volumes, but here in the cow ox, the shades are, the light is given from all around, and we do feel the sense of volume, but not a consistent application of light and shade. And in this figure also we feel the same thing. Some parts are given shade, but not as consistent as the Western figure painting we've seen. We have another way of representing volume, though, by linear depiction only. And this is a 8th century Chinese work which is kept in Shoso in Nara, called Bodhisattva on hemp cloth. If you look at the changing thickness of the lines, you will see how masterfully it was done. So we feel the volume of the Bodhisattva's body, and especially on the face, you see that by applying the thick line here and thin line down below, we feel the thickness of the eyelid, and the face is given 2 layers of line, and so she, Bodhisattva, looks very plump. I almost said she, but I should not, because bodhisattvas are supposed to be sexless. It's a being. So, I'm sorry. And then we talked about Western influence, but also at this time there was a new school of learning called Shirak or Shishue in Chinese, the school of practical learning. And this also came to Korea by way of China. The Shirak scholars advocated political, economic, and social and educational reforms, emphasizing not only the humanistic disciplines derived from China, but also social science, natural science, and technology. The last part is really important. Before this, Korean scholars were all interested in metaphysical things like Li or Qi, but starting from this period, people began to pay more attention on practical affairs of things. And then there was a surge of interest in promoting a new understanding of country's history, literature, language, and geography. And this led to the rise of true view landscape paintings. We will see some of that later. And, excuse me, there is some important element that I should briefly mention at this point. In 1644, Ming Dynasty came to an end. And so instead, the Manchu established the Qing Dynasty. But the Manchus are supposed to be barbarians. Koreans called them barbarians. And so Koreans thought that in the absence of Ming Dynasty is a dynasty of the Han people. Koreans thought that Koreans should be the guardian of the Zhonghua, or great Han civilization. So then they became really aware of the history of their own dynasty. It's an interesting phenomenon. So Korean people began to pay more attention to country's history, literature, and language. Now in China, there is this Italian Jesuit missionary and scholar, cartographer, translator of Western books on Christianity and science into Chinese. He also introduced the Western calendar to Chinese court. Because of such presence of such Jesuit missionaries, many books on Christianity with illustrations came to China, and I'm showing you only one page from it, Healing the Leper, engraving from Nadal's Life of Christ. And this came to China already in the early 17th century. This is very interesting drawing of a cupola. If you look at the cupola from below, how would it look? The one by Andrea Pozzo below, Italian, is from Perspectiva Pictorium e Architectorium, 1693 edition. Look how precise it looks. And this was copied by a Chinese person, and we don't know who, but this was an illustration from a book called Shi Xue. This was compiled by Nian Xiyao. He's a rather famous figure who was the head of the Chinese official killing for a long time. Sorry. And in China, during the Kangxi period, a book called Pei Wenjai, Album of Painting of Agriculture and Sericulture. This has many leaves of painting showing farming and sericulture. So in this illustration, we see certain amount of perspective, much better than the parallel perspective that we've shown before. And also at the court of Qianlong Emperor, there was an Italian painter called Lang Sherning. Giuseppe Castiglione is his real name. And he painted horses the way the Chinese never had done before. Going back to Korean intellectuals' response to Western painting, this person, Yi Ik, is a very interesting scholar who left a book called Seongho Sasol. And he, in this book, he has this section called Convexity and Concavity in a Painting. Recently, most emissaries to Yanjing brought back Western paintings and hung them in the center hall of their homes. When looking at these paintings, one should close one eye and with the other eye stare at them for a long time so that the buildings and walls reveal their true shapes. It's interesting, when before I studied art history, I was an artist. So whenever we tried to sketch something, we always closed one eye and we looked at like this. And now I read this 18th century scholar's remark. It's interesting. And because the distance between the objects is clearly described, one should look at the painting with only one eye. Even in China, this kind of painting never existed before. And he is interesting because can you imagine a Korean scholar of the 18th century reading Euclid geometry? He is reading Euclid geometry translated into Chinese by Li Madu. That's Matteo Ricci. I showed his portrait. There he says the function of geometry is to help represent on flat surface three-dimensional objects such as cylinder and cubic columns by correctly observing with one's own eyes and determining the distance, level, or grade by applying light and shade. And geometry also helps one to be precise about measurements of distances and things in order to represent true shapes. And I thought what is interesting is to see distant objects from the near representation and to see a ball from a circle, because the convexity and concavities are indicated. And he's not a painter or scholar, scientist, but he was so much interested in this new trend. And this is another person. Maybe it's getting too long, so I will skip. Now he thought that there was this painting of a dog, and he looked outside and there were real live dogs, but he couldn't distinguish which is which instead of reading the whole thing. And then again, Lee Dong-mu is also a very interesting person with scientific mind. So they saw the same painting. So here under the picture, there were several dogs lying in the shade. It was hard for me to distinguish a painted dog from a live one. So I'm showing this one, chained. And we don't know exact date of this painting, and we don't know the painter, but we do have this painting. Very fierce dog. And then another one is also too long, so I will summarize it. He was mainly paying attention to the effect of the atmosphere and natural color of the sky. So he says even to the faraway limits of the sky, right colors were applied. So in East Asian painting up to this time skies were left unpainted. But here we have in the 18th century skies are painted blue. So this is the change. And he thinks that this is the change that comes from Western painting. This is the same painting. And also, my last quotation is Park Ji-won. He is really the most literary person of Korean history. On the left and right, Park Ji-won's Yang Hwagi, or Western painting, this Yehol diary is one of the most famous literary pieces in Korean history. On the left and right side of the wall, there were scenes of a summer day with lumps of clouds floating on the sky as if the sun was riding amidst a valley. Along with the rainbows, in the depths of the immeasurable space, ghosts and goblins of all sorts seemed to fly each other. Some of them looked quite far away, while others emerged closer from the depth. And I will skip this much, and then I will. When I looked up the high ceiling, numerous babies were playing amidst the clouds of 5 colors, as if suspended in midair. Their wrists and shins looked plump. Their skin looked warm, if touched. Suddenly, the viewers were struck with the sight of the falling babies, and with their heads leaned backward, extended their arms as if to receive them. So what they saw is this kind of Baroque illusionistic painting. Andrea Pozzo, I mentioned earlier, Adoration of Saint Ignatius, ceiling fresco in Rome. And so what would you do if the babies fall to the ground? So the Korean emissaries had to extend their arms to catch the falling babies. So that was how real they thought these were. Korean paintings before coming of the Western influence does not really show the sense of volume, although Koreans concentrated on capturing the spirit of the sitter. This is a portrait of Lee Hang-bok, a very famous scholar statesman of the 17th century. And about 50 years later, this portrait, also of a scholar official, is showing a great deal of Western influence in the depiction of the face, the shade applied, and sense of volume created. So if you can compare the two, we wouldn't say that this painting is the left one is superior because of the Western influence, but anyway, it's the difference of the period. And then this portrait of mid-18th century has even more accurate way of depicting depicting the face by giving light and shade, and the direction of the light from consistent source. This one is a very interesting painting by Kim Hong-do. Kim Hong-do, I'm sure you know who he is, landscape and genre painting, very famous. The face does not show light and shade as we've seen in earlier paintings, but at this time some scholars didn't want to have their face painted so dark, because then they thought their personality would be diminished. So in a way, it is a return to traditional way of painting, but then still very subtle shading and realistic rendering. And then in Buddhist painting, this is a very strong light and shade given to some of the guardian figures. In landscape painting, we've seen this painting. Now the sky is blue. That means it is going to be more natural. And the same painter, Kang Hee-yeon, painted this morning fog over the North Palace. Now, when we say North Palace, it refers to Gyeongbok Palace. It's the North Palace, and Changdeok Palace is the East Palace. And Kang Se-hwang is a painter, critic, as well as statesman. He says, the artist told me that his leather shoes were dampened by the morning fog while waiting for the fog to descend on the area. Having heard this, I appreciate better the wondrous qualities of this painting. So Kang Hee-yeon is a meteorologist, court meteorologist. So he was more aware of the effect of fog in atmosphere, and he tried to capture the effect in his painting. This is a view of Kaesong. You know, Kaesong is now it's so famous. So there is a semblance of a linear perspective from the main gate of the city, going back to the distance. There's this broad avenue narrowing into the distance. And what is interesting in this painting by the same artist, Kang Se-hwang, is the way he showed this underside of the roof. This means that he's standing on the ground looking up. No other painter painted it this way. He's a very interesting person. And now comes to Kim Hong-do's painting. In this painting of Hwanseonjeong Pavilion, we see this sense of distance going back into very far away place. And this is the cover of my book. It's Nine Dragons Pond. And I took this picture in 1999 when I visited North Korea for the first time. And I was able to capture almost the same composition as the 18th and 19th century painters. So they are, without my telling you the similarity, they are very similar. So now the Korean artists were traveling and observing firsthand and expressing the scenery in their paintings. True view landscape painting, as I say, is the other chapter of my book, so it will be very long if I go into it, but I will simply go into this animal painting. In this painting by Byun Sang-byuk, Cats and Sparrows, we can see how the artist is capturing the furry quality of the animal and the posture of this typical posture of the cat, and they are looking up into each other. And another animal painting by Kim Hong-do and Kang Se-hwang. Kim Hong-do did the tiger, Kang Se-hwang did the pine tree. And see also how realistic the rendering of the fur would be. And this is another genre of painting that Koreans love to have. Now it's becoming more popular. Lee Hyung-nok's Scholar's Paraphernalia. It's a thing. It's a painting of things arranged in bookcase. And it also has tradition going back to China. This was attributed to this Italian painter. Because in Italy, there is this tradition of eye-deceiving representation on flat surface to showing the depth of things. And this one is called Studiolo from Gubbio, northern Italy. It's reconstructed in the Renaissance Gallery of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I'm showing you only one section of it. It's such an amazing corner. When you go to the Metropolitan, you should really visit this corner. And now, going back to Korean bookcase painting, you will see that it looks like it has a reasonably ordered space. But then I analyzed this perspective, and it comes to almost like the Chinese perspective drawing I showed you at the beginning. It comes, some of it converge into one point, but mostly on the center axis. So it looks wonderful, but not as accurate as Western perspective. And another one, I have this interesting painting, but since my time is up, I will simply go to my last painting. This is another bookcase painting, very interesting. But I always over-prepare, so it's hard for me to be on time. But this one is an interesting painting by a Westerner who came to the Joseon court and painted Emperor Gojong's portrait. And he might have done a wonderful job depicting the drapery and the standing posture of the emperor. But then if we look at portrait of Korean painters, portrait of Emperor Gojong done by a Korean painter, you will see how strange the Westerners portrayed the emperor's image. And then toward the end of the 19th century, photography came to Korea. And then some people thought that we should abolish the court painting bureau system because we don't have to train the artists to paint portraits. We can take photography instead. So this one, Portrait of Emperor Gojong, was taken by a famous painter, Kim Kyu-jin. And he could also paint as well as this, as realistically as this, but he showed off his skill in photography. And my second to the last painting, Chae Young-shin lived until mid-20th century, and his portrait of Hwang Hyun, the famous scholar who committed suicide at the news of the Japan's annexation to Korea, so precisely real. It's almost like a photography. Now, having said all this and having shown you all these examples of how wonderful the Western influence on Korean painting have been, I would like to end my lecture with a painting that is done way before the coming of the Western art. And you will see whether you like this painting or whether you like the paintings that were influenced by the Western art. Thank you. My lecture is here.